right, hi.
Hey.
So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the program. This is David Rainoshek. I am the co-creator of the Juice Feasting program, the 92-day Juice Feasting program. It's a life practice that you can do for up to 92 days to cleanse, rebuild, rehydrate, and alkalize and heal many of our major Western challenges. We've been doing this for about a decade. It's coming out in its fourth major revision as of now. And so today I'm joined by Courtney Poole to talk about her experience with juice feasting for her own health and also as a professional coach and educator. Courtney is a juice feasting practitioner and coach, an 8-year vegan, a former staff member at the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center in Arizona, and author of the Spirulina Recipes ebook on spirulinajunkie.com. As a former speaker, she addressed crowds of exciting spirulina junkies and juicing aficionados at 105 Degrees in Oklahoma City, the New Life Expo in New York City, has written articles for Chris Carr's Crazy Sexy Life, Vegan Mainstream, and you can find the home of her writing and teaching at courtneypoole.com. I'm very glad to have her on the program as she's an amazing former student of mine on juice feasting and now, as a colleague, is a radiant, thoughtful, and passionate advocate of juice feasting for better health. So welcome, Courtney. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah, of course. Well, we go way back. You were with Katrina and I
Mhm.
in Arizona at the Tree of Life when we headed
I
down to
see.
Nogales, Arizona to elope.
Yep, I
One
was
of only
there.
two people that were there besides the Justice of the Peace. So we've known
hmm
each other for a while.
Yeah, I even knew you for a brief period of time before you met Katrina. So,
That's right. Yep. So we were around the Tree of Life for quite a while and have been teaching people about plant-based nutrition and how that can heal just about all manner of health conditions in the West for some time now. So it really is a pleasure to have you on today. I've wanted to do this for a while because, again, you are really an amazing advocate for health and also for juice feasting.
thank you.
So I'd love to hear from you about your experiences with juice feasting today, starting with your first experience of encountering juice feasting and doing an extended juice feast.
hmm Sure, thanks. That's a great place to start. So basically, I would say that a lot of that started just being at the Tree of Life and becoming friends with David. Because I was around a lot of people doing juice cleansing and did know about it before I went to the Tree of Life, but hadn't met too many people who had done it themselves. Um, and so going there was really the first time that I got to meet a lot of people who had done it, who knew a lot about it. There were, I think, several hundred people who came through the center every year, a lot of whom did juice cleanses.
Right.
And then I met David and he talked about juice feasting, which was, a whole step up from what you generally heard of a standard juice cleanse really being like. And he, obviously talked about people going for a lot longer than I'd ever heard of people going for. And, even by that time, even though it was so long ago, you'd worked with so many people.
Right.
And, there was already a big body of evidence of how powerful it could be. And at the time, I was, definitely, making some big leaps and strides in cleaning up my own diet and, adopting a lot of healthy lifestyle practices and things like that. But I was not where I wanted to be. And I just felt the more that I talked with you and the more that I saw, what other people's journeys were like. And, I'd see David talking with the guests and doing their Q&As and overhear them and thought they were fascinating. And I just felt like, this is kind of what I need to clear out. And I had a pretty horrible diet, growing up. My parents were definitely not ones that really tried very hard to get me to eat vegetables, and it was very, very standard American. And I, in the couple of years before, kind of arriving at this point of learning about all of this and wanting to do a cleanse, I developed some health issues, which had started to clear up just based on me changing my diet, but were not totally gone. And I felt like, something like a juice feast was what I really needed to do to go to much more of a deeper level.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it started.
Right. And did you get into a plant-based diet for ethical reasons, or were you studying nutrition and decided to get into it?
What actually happened, it's kind of a funny story. I'll try to make it not too long, but I was not healthy at all. Basically, my deal was that I was an athlete and I was a very high performing athlete. I did competitive swimming and water polo and things like that. And like many athletes, I did a lot of carb loading, and my team did a lot of um, going out to fast food. I probably
Right.
ate fast food a good 3 times a week at
Uh-huh.
least. And then times I wasn't eating fast food from a fast food restaurant, it was basically fast food at home,
You were on the
So
You were on the Michael Phelps plan.
yeah, really, I was like, oh, 6 pancakes, for breakfast at least, and
Uh-huh.
pasta for 3 meals a day. And yeah, it was, I mean, I remember when I first started learning about nutrition, I was like, when was the last time I had a piece of fruit? And I think I'd come up with like 3 months ago. And so I was just, you know, I was exercising and exercising, sometimes training up to like 4 hours a day, and just eating horribly. And basically, the health issues that started happening were the main one was actually a really bad chronic fatigue.
Mm.
In the sense of like sleeping for 10 hours a night, waking up like having to I usually take a shower sitting down because I
Right.
was so tired, and I'd often fall asleep.
Right.
And then I'd fall asleep in class, and which I was a person who tried to be a good student, so that was something that I didn't want, but it happened.
Hmm.
Um, I was just constantly exhausted and on the verge of falling asleep. So the fatigue was really bad. I started to show the thing is, I didn't go to a lot of doctors at that time. So a lot of these things I've sort of self-diagnosed based on seeing the symptoms, but I started showing symptoms of like nutritional deficiency, basically,
Uh-huh.
where my hair was starting to fall out, and like, my skin was really just not nourished, and my eyes were very dull, and I just like physically started to show some of those symptoms. What else? I developed a pretty bad virus called the Epstein-Barr virus, which
Uh-huh.
is kind of a precursor to mono, and that caused, in addition to the fatigue, kind of chronic fatigue problems, it would cause me to sort of like, it was almost like I would get mono for like 4 days,
Right.
and then it would
Right.
go away. And a month later, I'd basically get mono for 4 days
Right.
and had to miss school and all of that. What else? I had started having hormonal issues and issues
Mm.
with my menstrual cycle. Um, and I also started really having a lot of mental focus issues.
Hmm.
I was, pretty good in school and, pretty smart and all that, but I felt at least kind of doing fine. And I started noticing myself just not being able to concentrate, partially because of the energy, but partially just like I could not keep a subject in my mind and
Right.
get things done. And that was kind of scary for me. So what actually happened was not even really my proactive any kind of proactive measure on my part, but at the time the Super Size Me documentary
Sure.
came out, which was a big pop culture thing at that time, and
Yeah.
somebody else actually made me watch it, which I guess tells you the power of documentaries, right?
Uh-huh.
So somebody else made me watch it, and at the time, I mean, I had knew nothing and didn't really care, and I watched it and I was like, oh, maybe I should stop eating fast food three to
Uh-huh.
five times a week.
Right.
So it actually started just with the fast food, just with like not going to McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King anymore. And so that was really the first step. And then basically what happened after that is among my friends, especially most of them being athletes, just me not wanting to go to the fast food restaurant with them, for several times a week, 3 to 5 times a week, started getting me labeled the health nut.
Uh-huh.
I'm still eating, basically all the other crap that everybody else eats, right? The standard American diet, but I wasn't eating at the fast food restaurants,
Right.
so I became the hippie health chick. Um, and then a couple months after was my birthday that year, and a friend of mine got me a book because I'd become this health nut, um, called Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About by
Sure.
Kevin Trudeau.
Hmm.
Read that, and basically, from that documentary and then that book, there was just this period of time where I started getting more interested, changing more things about my diet, feeling the effects positively,
Right.
being more intrigued, and just kind of went along that route.
Yeah.
So eventually it did become, something that I resonated with on an environmental basis and an ethical basis and animals and all that. But at the beginning, it really was for health.
Right.
So
I've coached several swimmers who've had issues with low energy, and there's a huge
Yeah.
link between chlorine and the depression of the
Yes.
thyroid. So that was just
Yep.
probably one of the basket of things that was going on for you.
And that's probably very true. And I did, that's another thing is like no doctor probably would have ever validated that, but I did have that suspicion
Right.
because, it was like basically an indoor chlorine pool that I trained at, and it was that many hours a day. So I'm sure that that was a part of it, and my diet didn't
Uh-huh.
help me recover from that. So, yeah.
So tell me about your first juice feast. How significant was
Yeah.
that for you, and what were the highlights?
It was really significant. Well, I did it with you. You were my
Yeah.
coach for that one. And so it was while I was in Arizona. And physically, um, I was really happy to be in a place where I felt a consistent level of energy um, and just like well-being.
And how long
You
did
know,
you go?
we went for 60 days, about
Right.
60 days. It might have been 62 days or something.
Right.
And I felt just so happy to have such a consistent level of energy.
Mm.
Energy, had been a big thing, but also just, all of those things that people report, like, but the consistency was really it,
Uh-huh.
because I did experience all those things people talk about: more energy, better sleep, more mental clarity, skin, skin improvement,
Mhm.
just a feeling of well-being, weight loss and all of that. But because of my eating habits, which were both, the problem was that they were very toxic, but I
Mm.
also have had a long history of compulsive eating and
Uh-huh.
binging and overeating. And it was like the longest that I'd ever been in like this consistent place where I felt good,
Right.
because previously I could maybe swing a day or a part of a day where I felt like I was eating really well and I wasn't eating too much
Mm.
and like feeling the benefit of that. But I mean, my diet was just so unstable for so long that like I felt was just like blissed out by like, oh my gosh, I'm waking up and feeling amazing every day.
Right.
And I'm going to bed feeling amazing every day, and it's happening multiple days in a row. It was really revolutionary for me. And it was really great because I think because I had really grown up with so much of a toxic diet, and certainly did have health stuff growing up, that now that I look back, I'm like, that was because I ate that way. That
Right.
I think the juice feast was also the first time that I really experienced how good my body could feel.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think, unfortunately, and I was in this boat, is that a lot of kids these days, they grow up and they're pretty much on this bad diet, like out of the womb almost. If
Right.
they're lucky, they'll get breastfed, but even after that, a lot of times it's not so good.
Mm.
And so I think that it felt like getting used to a different body, sort
Yeah.
of. It
Yep.
was like, wow, this is pretty unprecedented. It
Right.
wasn't like, oh, now I feel how I used to feel. It was like, now I feel like I've never felt.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I
yeah,
like to say that juice feasting is like a peak experience. So you get a peak this way,
yeah,
but you also get a peak this way, and what's
yeah.
possible, and it comes on pretty quick too. I mean,
Mm,
in a few weeks, you're
yeah,
like, wow, I'm in significantly different territory now than I was before.
yeah, 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 exactly.
So, did juice feasting as a practice, being inside of the practice itself, do you feel like that set up better practices of eating after the juice feast?
Yeah, I do think it did. I think that the main thing, I think that what it helped me with, I mean, I definitely noticed physical differences of like, I noticed a physical difference of, feeling like I had different cravings than I'd had
Uh-huh.
before, you know. Definitely had different cravings and craved more healthy stuff after the juice feast, and that
Right.
felt like a natural thing that was happening. And then also, I think that more like mentally, I think that I was just really, I'm sorry, there's a truck
Oh,
out
that's all
there.
right.
Mentally, I was, it had been kind of along the lines of what I was saying earlier, is that it was so unprecedented for me to feel so good for such a consistent, extended period of time,
Mm.
that I think that that really, like I always want to use the word spoiled me, but I know that's
Uh-huh.
not the right word because obviously it's kind of what we're supposed to feel. But it like kind of solidified this, like, I don't want to feel any different than the way I've been feeling. Like,
Right.
I know what I can have and now I want it.
Right.
So I think that mentally and emotionally on that level was a really big piece because I'd had 2 months basically in that space. And, and kind of came out of that just feeling like even more of a resolve and more of a vision of what it could be.
Right.
It's like sometimes when you've been in bad health and that's all it is hard to really like relate to what good health would actually feel like for you in your life.
Right.
So, yeah.
So was it significant in such a way that you feel like there was kind of my time before juice feasting and then the juice feast happened and then there was like kind of everything after that?
Yeah,
Was it a
I think
doorway that you
so.
passed through?
It was a doorway, and it was a doorway also just I think in the sense of kind of the hero's journey like you talk about it, like it was just this goal that I set, and it's a long time to juice. Anybody
Sure.
who does that long, it's a long time to juice, and I felt like it was something that I never expected myself to be able to do.
Right.
And part of the reason I was able to do it is because it's such an accessible type of cleansing. So physically it felt balanced as well. But even just coming off of it and being like, okay, I have this ability to do this thing for myself
Yeah.
that is so in my own best interest, and I can follow through. And like, I'm not like a spineless person when it comes to diets or just really weak. Like a lot of us have this definition of ourselves. And so I think that was a big turning point. After that, there was still some back and forth that I did with my diet and still kind of refining things. And I did additional juice feasts. But I would say that like it was definitely of any single health kind of or self-improvement thing that I've done, it was the most nodal kind of turn in a different direction.
Right.
Yeah.
So as a life practice, how has it evolved for you over the years?
Well, personally, I pretty much do a couple of juice feasts every year
Hmm.
and have been doing that pretty consistently.
Right.
And it feels great. I mean, it's for a different purpose now because I don't
Mhm.
enter into it in a really bad physical place.
Right.
But I love it because it's such a good tune-up.
Yeah.
It's like putting new oil in your car. It's like you do it and you feel better. And I feel, and I know this is something you've got a lot of info on your website about too, is that part of the problem that we all face is the environmental toxins as
Right.
well, and the toxicity that we take in almost even if we do a lot to try to mitigate it,
Yep.
if we're eating well and, we try to minimize household toxins. Unfortunately, we all live in this world where we're around car exhaust and we're around all the chemicals that are dumped in the air and,
Right.
some stuff just gets in. And so I feel like it's a really responsible thing to just keep my body up and running to even get that stuff out. But certainly, it's great. I feel like it's great after a winter where maybe I've been eating a little bit, more substantial foods and, kind of cleaning out, and it just always feel, renewed after. It's like getting a massage, but better.
Right.
Yeah. An internal massage. Yeah.
So how is it going from juice feasting for yourself to coaching other people?
Yeah, well, I actually, when we did the juice feast back then, I had the intention to want to coach people, because that's how much my desire had grown, and so we had worked together in my training to become a juice feasting coach then. And then I did some of that kind of in the context of the Tree of Life, while I was still there. So I did some distance, some coaching people out of a distance, just like over Skype. But mostly what I was doing at that point was some of the nutritional Q&As at the Tree of Life and check-ins with the guests and
Hmm.
some of the educational classes and just support sessions. So a lot of it came in that capacity. And then when I finished at the Tree of Life after being there for 5 years, then I started doing it like more full time, and most of it has been, over Skype
Yeah.
and at a distance. And I just love it. I mean, I think similarly to you, I just feel it's like it's a personal thing anytime I work with someone because I get so personally excited about what their
Right.
potential is and I get excited that they might not even know how good they can feel,
Right.
just like I didn't. And so, yeah, it's really, really, fulfilling, and people have amazing stories based on the healing power of juice. So,
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I mean, I was really sick for a number of years before I
yeah.
encountered juice feasting. And when I started coaching other people, it really started to bring into sharp focus the purpose of my suffering all of those years, and it
Hmm.
really changed my perspective on why I
Yeah.
went through that and caused me to stop being so immediately judgmental about anything that was
Sure.
arising in my life that wasn't working so well. It was like, well,
Yeah.
stop, hold on a second, wait, let's see how this actually turns out to be good.
Right.
And I was also able to take all of that time that I was suffering with my health and trying to figure it out and turn that into an enormous amount of compassion and skillfulness with
Hmm.
regards to coaching other people.
Yeah.
How's that been for you in terms of taking your own personal experience and translating it into to coaching other people?
Yeah. Well, I think that that a lot of a lot of the physical things that many of us this day and age go through can be relatable. Unfortunately, a lot of people can relate on like having low energy, and
Uh-huh.
all of that. But I think also, it's been helpful to have a lot of cleansing, juice feasting under my belt to be able to also relate to what people are going through on as far as detox symptoms and, the fact that like, if you have a headache, it's gonna be okay. That's a
Right.
normal thing. And but I think that what is always universally relevant for everybody is really more of the life change and the life transformation and the mental and emotional sides of the process.
Right.
Because the physical, challenges someone have could be some things that I haven't had personally.
Right.
Although the juice can heal that in many cases just as well. But I think that the universal things about the hero's journey and about, hardship and about perseverance and all of that is something that I feel like I can share my experience with and have something to say about, that I hope people are helped by.
Yeah. I feel like
Yeah.
I fell by dumb luck into a coaching
Mhm.
environment that's really amazing because
Yeah.
the level juice feasting requires that you're talking with the folks that you're coaching on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
so in some cases I speak with my clients every day, and it
Hmm.
was like, wow, people want to talk about more than just what's going on with
Hmm.
their physical health. They want to talk about the job they're doing, relationships that they're in, books
Yeah.
they're reading, hopes that they have, things that they want to jettison from their lives, other new things they want to bring in. And
Mm.
I felt like by dumb luck I fell into this absolutely beautiful crucible of
Yeah.
discovery and transformation, and just
Mm.
it's just a wonderful environment to be in, the Juice Feast. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, it is. And I think that for many of us, some element is the fact of just not having knowledge about nutrition,
right,
which is such an important piece. And some of it is also the fact that, sometimes there are things in our lives that need to be changed, and that's also causing us to use food as a crutch,
right,
which is where I think what you're talking about comes in, where like, to really change your health, sometimes you do have to look at my job and my
uh,
relationships and, those things that maybe when they're, if I'm kind of ignoring addressing those things, then I might be more likely to go for the pizza rather than the green juice.
right,
You know, yeah.
yeah. And I've also found that it's been really nice that since we juice feast while we're taking on our daily lives, it's like you're in this special kind of crucible, if you will, but
Hmm.
you're still right there in your daily life. So it's like
Yeah.
the things that you need to work on are like right there for you to work with. As
Yeah.
opposed to I'm going off to a retreat center and do this and get away
Oh
from my
yeah.
normal life and my kids and the bills and
Yeah.
all that.
I
It's like it's
totally
right
agree.
there front and center for you to work with.
And I think on some level that's actually an advantage because then, it's not like you're in this ideal environment and then you go home and it's like, oh, now how do
Right.
I deal with this in life?
Right.
And it can be really different. And it's funny sometimes the first time I talk to someone before they've started their juice fees, they'll say things like, well, I really want this to be about more than the physical, or like I have this or that goal, or there's some things that I want to like work on emotionally, and they'll say things like, well, how do I get into that? Like, how do I trigger that stuff? And I'll just say, just drink the juice and give it enough time,
That's
and
right.
everything that needs to come up will come up on
Yep.
the juice feast. As soon as you're not using food, and there's just something synchronous, I think, that happens on a juice feast too, that eventually, things that need to be addressed, to support the health transformation, that are more on a life basis will all come up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us are really yearning for a practice, for something to come into our lives that will actually help us to healthily work on ourselves and transform our lives. We're really yearning for it. And
Hmm.
so it gets really exciting when you give yourself that permission, by
Yeah.
drinking all the juice. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
everything else comes in.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I
So,
agree.
so as you're aware, 70% of Americans are overweight. About
Mm-hmm.
70% of people I just recently found out are on at least one pharmaceutical. A
Mm.
third of children born today will develop diabetes in their lifetime, should we carry on the same path. And about
Mhm.
95% of the food dollars that we spend every year are on processed foods. So in the face of this,
Yep.
what gives you hope? What are the promising elements of our lives now or our lives that are coming, either individually or collectively, that really keep you going, knowing what you know about
Yeah.
things like juice feasting and also knowing what you know about the bad news sides of
Yeah.
things right now?
Yeah. Well, I think that the thing that's most inspiring are just the individual stories.
Hmm.
Um, there are I've come across some statistics that seem to be positive,
Hmm.
like more people are eating organic food than ever before.
Right.
And different more people are eating gluten-free than ever before. And certain statistics which are not the whole picture in and of themselves, but they do, point to the fact that people are kind of waking up.
Right.
Those are encouraging, but I find that the individual stories, of the people that I work with and the people that I just meet in other capacities to be the most exciting.
Yeah.
And I feel that, they're the most personal. And so I think that, even just one person making that big transformation in their life makes me, not even care if like millions of people are still not yet. Because I think I just have a belief that it'll happen,
Yeah.
eventually. And I think that, in a lot of ways, America has kind of led the way
Hmm.
as far as developing health issues related to a really poor diet and, the obesity rate.
We're leading the way,
Um,
baby.
yeah, leading the way that way. But I've also heard, things recently, just even from other people in other countries who have said, there's so many more options for health in
Right.
your country than ours. And so I do wonder, if maybe it'll be a scenario where we got the worst the quickest,
Uh-huh.
but maybe because of that, we'll start learning our lesson and start turning the tide a little bit.
Right.
And, that would be great to think that maybe we're kind of seeing the worst of it right now.
Yeah.
That's what I hope. But as far as my personal inspiration, it's really the people that I get to know personally
Yeah.
and how their lives change.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Great. And I think so too. I mean, it's the possibilities for an individual to change their life now, I think is just greater than ever
Yeah.
before. So even as all of these other systemic things seem to be going on and we see all of that bad news, that's it's evolution seems to happen where there's like good news and bad news and it's like neck and neck. And part
Yeah.
of just the amazing news right now is all of the information and practices that we have available to us that we really can do. We don't have to go and ask anybody's permission.
Yeah.
You can do it. And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of other inspiring individuals out there that are more easily accessible through things like the internet,
Yeah.
to inspire us. So, like you talking
Hmm.
about just watching a documentary and it's like the light bulb goes on. So there's a
Hmm.
lot more of that kind of thing available, and that gives me hope too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you're in Boulder, Colorado now, which is kind of
I
a
am.
veritable crucible for forward-thinking, creative folks. So what are
It
you
is.
working on right now?
Well, I mean, as far as my coaching, it mostly is people who are all over the place. So on some level, that is kind of consistent no matter where I live,
Uh-huh.
because I work with people in all continents pretty much. But I kind of just arrived here, but I'd like to do, more kind of speaking engagements and classes and things like
Right.
that. There's certainly a lot of people here very interested in natural health and not just natural health physically, but a lot of environmentally conscious people and people into local economy. And so it's an inspiring place to be.
Right. Great.
Hmm. Yeah.
So finally, as the author of a book on spirulina, what is the most spirulina you've ever eaten in a day? And
Oh
what do
my
you have
goodness.
against chlorella that it hasn't gotten a book out of you yet?
That's hilarious. Well, first of all, I didn't totally write the spirulina recipes ebook. It's actually very heartfelt collaboration of a lot of different chefs, including some recipes by me, but there's a lot of different chefs that contributed to it. So it's kind of a compilation book. But oh my goodness, and actually this is connected to the Juice Feast because this is a funny story, and I feel like I don't know what exactly. I have some theories about what it means. But while I was on the Juice Feast, I had never really had spirulina before.
Huh.
I think I'd had it in a couple dishes. Somebody put it in, but it wasn't something I really thought about much. And while I was on my Juice Feast, probably I want to say about a month into the 2-month Juice Feast, a friend of mine was eating a salad that he had put spirulina in, and
Right.
he actually made it almost every day for lunch. And this was at the Tree of Life
Mm-hmm.
Rejuvenation Center, and so I saw him every day. It was at the salad, and I started noticing myself just like staring at his salad. I mean, you kind of do a little too much staring sometimes at food when you're on a juice feast, but I was like really staring at this salad every time he had it, and I was like, this is so weird. I'm like totally magnetized to this spirulina,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't a thing of like, oh, I used to love this food and now I can't have it, so I miss it. So I started having it on the juice feast because it is one of the superfoods that you can incorporate, which
Yep.
is pretty much heaven. And so I started incorporating it and just felt totally nourished, felt really good about it. But of course, it's the juice feast, so you can't do too much of it. So I limited myself. But after the juice feast was done, I like went off the deep end with spirulina. And there was one time that I ate. I love the Health Force Nutritionals, the Manna
Uh-huh.
spirulina, and they have, I think it's got to be a 16 ounce, like a pretty big
Nice
jar.
big jar.
Big jar. And I think I ate the entire jar in 5 days, 4 or 5 days. So that had to, I don't know how many tablespoons that had to have been, 10, 12
Uh-huh.
in a day, maybe
Yeah.
more. Yep.
Yeah.
I would take it to the movie theater. I'd make spirulina salad and take it to the movie theater.
Right.
Yeah.
And that
So
went well for you. Mhm.
it went well. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And chlorella, I love chlorella. I don't have anything against chlorella. I just personally like the taste of spirulina better. That's
Yeah.
really all it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
it's something that I found, moving into live vegan foods was that I went through periods of just an irrational or a pre-rational craving for something. And there's a number of foods that kind of line up that way. I won't go into them all right now, but it was a few days or a few weeks. That was all it ever was. But it was just,
Yep.
I can't get enough of this right now. And I started to learn to just go ahead and go for it. And what I
Mm-hmm.
liked about that, what I liked about live foods, what I really love about juice feasting is that
Mm-hmm.
it's healing through abundance. And that's really
Yeah.
what the program is about. I mean, you
I
can
know.
heal by, let me see if I can get out of the way and fast and be still and not go to work and not do anything and hope that all this stuff leaves. And so there's
Mm-hmm.
kind of that way of,
Yep.
kind of the freedom route of just, can I just let this stuff go quietly? And the other way is, how much of the cosmos can I go ahead and take on? How many good life practices, how many amazing foods and conversations and life practices can I bring in and bring to
Yeah.
bear on my healing that will also set off, a
Mm-hmm.
better life
Yeah.
afterwards as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is. It's, because I think most of us, what we're going for when we want better health is we want more of life, right? Like usually the problem is we're missing out on life already. Like we feel deprived on some level,
Right.
whether it's like, I mean, anything. We don't have the energy to do certain things. We don't feel comfortable in our bodies, so we don't do certain things. I mean, there's a lot of times, that we're just missing out. And so I think that being able to move towards the abundance and like the possibilities in life while you physically feel like there's an abundance happening I think it just matches. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's definitely been the kind of energy that's been most helpful for my own journey.
Yeah, great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for so fully and abundantly and radiantly supporting juice feasting and practicing it yourself and encouraging other people to do it. It's
Yeah.
fantastic to talk with you today. So nice to see you again.
Thank you. You
And,
too.
and so for everybody watching, you can find out about juice feasting below this video. Really enjoy the abundant life practice that you can access and use for the rest of your life. Both of us will see you on the
Yeah.
website later and out there in the world. Thanks for coming on to the program today. Bye,
See
Courtney.
you later.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.